Max offers quite a few options when it comes to rendering your scene. Let's take a look at some of your choices. The file I'm using on the screen is called Rendering Techniques. Your rendering commands are located on the far right side of the toolbar. You have Render Production, Rendered Frame Window, and Render Setup. We'll talk primarily about the first two buttons in this video, then more fully discuss the Render Setup options when we get to a video a little later on in this chapter on saving a rendered image. When you're wanting to simply render one of your views, all you do is activate the viewport and hit the Render Production button on the toolbar. It's the teapot on the far right. I'm going to start with the camera view. I'll make sure that's active and click Render Production. If you get any kind of warning message up when you render, make sure to go back and watch the video on customizing the interface, specifically the part where it mentions configuring map paths. Let's go ahead and close the window. If we instead wanted to take a picture of the front view, we'd activate that window and again hit Quick Render. You could also use the keyboard shortcut Shift-Q. Let's render the camera view again real quick so I can show you another option that's going to come in pretty handy. If you find yourself continually changing the view you're working in, but want to continue rendering the same view you last rendered, irrespective of what view might be active, Max offers a hotkey that translates to render last. It's F9. Let's try that. Now remember, the last view that was rendered was the camera. I'll now activate the front view and hit that F9 shortcut. Notice it was the camera view that rendered again. Let's close the dialog and try this in the top. We'll activate the top view, again hitting F9. And one more time around, the camera view is what renders. Let's now talk about some of the options you have in the render window. Now the official name for the dialog box that you see on the screen is the Rendered Frame Window. It's opened by either rendering a view or by clicking on the Rendered Frame Window icon on the toolbar. Let's take a look at some of the options in the window. Up in the upper left-hand corner, you can click to save an image. You can copy the image to the Windows clipboard so it can be pasted into another application, like maybe Photoshop. There's also a button that allows you to clone the last rendering, which would enable you to then compare the way the scene looked from one render to the next. You can print the image out, or you can clear the render window altogether, taking it back to an empty blank screen. Above that, under Viewport, you can change the view you'll render. So we can go from camera to, let's say, front, and then over to the top, directly from inside the window. I'll go back to camera. Under the Render preset, you can also choose from a series of preset rendering configurations. And to the right of that, you can click on the Render Setup button, which is the very same button that you find in the upper right-hand side of the toolbar. Probably the most important controls in the Rendered Frame window are the ones located in the upper left-hand corner under Area to Render. These options enable you to speed up the rendering process by rendering only certain objects or certain areas within your scene. Let's start with the render selected. With this option on, you'll render only what you might have selected in your scene. To set this up, let's minimize the window, then select the plate that you find on the lower left-hand side of the Entertainment Center. We'll get to the plate by activating the Select by Name dialog, hitting H on the keyboard. I'll now put these in alphabetical order, go a little farther down the list, and select Plate. From here, working in the camera view, I'll right-click on the plate, choose the Move command, then grab the red stick on the gizmo to push the plate to the right-hand side of the plasma TV. From there, I'll go back and maximize the rendered frame window, and now simply click on the Render button in the upper right-hand corner. A couple things I want to point out. First is the fact that you now see the plate repositioned to the right-hand side of the TV screen and rendered. But what might be a little confusing is all the other stuff inside the window. Here's the deal. When Max is set to render selected, and you very well might have noticed the speed up in render times with only the plate being rendered, the window that you see shows not just the re-rendered plate, but all the other stuff, well, that's the last rendering. The only part of the screen that had to redraw, in other words, re-render, was the position where the plate was. Now to confirm that, I'll go ahead and close the box, move the plate up in the camera view, and render one more time. You know as good as I, we don't have 3 plates. Again, the only part of the screen that's redrawing is where the plate currently is located. Let's close the window and hit undo a couple times to get the plate back in the cabinet on the right. I'll now reopen the render frame box, change the option back to render view, then click render once again. Now, there's also an option called render region. This works great when you're looking to render not just a single object, but an area, maybe to also gather up the shadows and reflections that might be in that specific location. To show you how this works, let's first of all minimize the render window. Let's take the camera view full screen with Alt-W, and now select the black glass door. Go to your rotate command. I'd like you to grab the yellow ring, and we'll go ahead and open up that smoked glass door. Okay, going back to the render frame window, I'll again reactivate the render region. Now I can manipulate the box you see directly inside the window. You grab a corner, you can change the size of the box. And to move it, you want to put your mouse in the middle, and I'll now position that so I can see what's inside the cabinet. Now remember, the smoked glass door is open. Let's go ahead and render. Max renders only the region inside that bounding box. And now you can see the contents of the cabinet without the door getting in the way. Let's return to render view and click on render again. There's also an option called crop. To work this, we'll have to minimize the box and do our business directly inside the viewport. The cropping command is a little different because what it'll do is it'll resize your rendering, including only the part that you see inside the bounding box. So in this instance, I'll change the size of the box, position it closer to the lynda.com on the screen, return to the render frame window, make sure it's on crop, and click render. See the difference there? Let's again return to render view. There's one more option I want to show you, and that's render blow up. This comes in especially handy when you're not wanting to zoom in and out of your window, but you're needing a more magnified look on a particular part of your scene. Watch the way this works. Again, we'll have to work not in the render window, but in the viewport. The bounding box can again be resized and moved to a different location. What we'll do is position on the middle shelf so we can get a bigger picture of the vase and neighboring teapot. Let's reopen the rendered window. Again, verify that it's on blow up and click render. Now, look at the difference there. That'll give you a few options you can use next time you render. They're all very handy, all depending on the job at hand, so take a little time to learn them and be sure to use them when next rendering a project.